The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 10th chapter. Jesus said, "Very truly, I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought all out of his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him because they do not know the voice of strangers." Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So again, Jesus said to them, "Very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved, and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." This is the gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. When I was 2, my grandpa passed away very suddenly. Amazingly, I do have memories of him. I remember a few moments. I remember him babysitting me and taking me to his neighbor's house with his wife Florence, my step-grandmother. I remember being there and having hot dogs, and every time he would turn away, I would take another piece of hot dog and just throw it onto his plate because I just didn't want them. And he would just keep talking and keep eating and had no idea what was going on. And I remember coming into their house, going in through the back door, through the kitchen, and on the shelf in the kitchen was always a dish of Brock's candy. And I would always run in there and go to the dish and then say hello to my grandparents and give them a hug. He was a very loving soul. He was a very caring soul. It's one of the reasons why I resonated to him at that little age. And I think it's one of the reasons why I do remember various moments with him. Besides the fact that obviously those were my only moments with him. I heard other stories through the years from my mom and my aunt of them growing up on the farm with him and their grandparents themselves. Farmhouse in Prospect Heights on old Camp McDonald Road near Elmhurst Road. That house is still standing, by the way. It now is the parish house for a Korean church right in that intersection there. It's a beautiful old house. I've never been in it. Unfortunately, I would love to be in it at some point. Here's the thing about my grandpa, and the reason I think of him on this particular weekend. He was a farmer. His life was spent tending the soil of God's creation and caring for various of God's creatures. They were not just his livelihood, they were his life. He cared for them, protected them, led them, guarded them. Every plant that he planted, he cared for. Even in times when the weather was rough, either drought or heavy storms, He cared for those creatures in that land. God had given Him that corner of the creation, and by all means, He was going to tend it and take care of it and love it and appreciate it. And He did for an overwhelming majority of His life. He actually sold the farm just a couple years before I was born and moved into a house in Mount Prospect near Randhurst Mall. So I've never been in that house. There's something to be said, by the way, for the miracle of genetics and how God makes all these things work. I have learned to love working in my yard with the soil and with plants. Believe it or not, Gail and I did the math today. In the 7.5 months that we have lived in this house, we have planted 44 trees and shrubs. And we kind of laugh about this. But you know, the truth is, I was thinking about this earlier today. I literally, and I think our neighbors probably find me amusing. I'm probably the entertainment for the neighborhood. And most of them don't really know me that well yet, so I really am probably the entertainment for them. But I literally walk around the yard, and I not only talk to these plants and pet them and everything, I water them, I care for them. I literally treat them like my children. My kids think I treat them better than I treat my children. But I have this innate personality. I love to care for God's creation. If you are a Facebook friend of mine, you will see that earlier today on my Facebook is a picture of a bee sitting on a flower petal, and it's a quote from Martin Luther that God does not only write the gospel in the Bible, but also on the trees and on the flowers and in the clouds and in the stars. I really believe that the gospel is written everywhere for us to experience the love and grace and glory of God. So it probably makes perfect sense that my grandparents were farmers, that I love to tend the soil and care for God's creatures, and that I would become a pastor. Because we are the flock, and Christ is our shepherd. As He says, the flock will follow their shepherd because they know His voice. They won't follow anybody else's. They won't follow a stranger. But they will follow the voice of their shepherd without hesitation. We are the sheep, every one of us. And Jesus is the shepherd. He sees us the same way that farmers see their land. He tends to us. Just like a farmer cares for all their creatures, Jesus cares for us, protecting us at all cost, guarding us, leading us, teaching us, poking and prodding at us, nourishing us. Jesus is the shepherd, the great farmer, and we are the sheep, the flock, the field to be tended to. When we think of our relationship with Christ that way, it becomes so incredibly beautiful. Jesus the shepherd, us the sheep. Jesus the farmer, us the corn. Constantly caring for us, constantly calling our names, tending to our needs, fertilizing us, nourishing us, teaching us, guiding us. It is a beautiful thought. Now I know there are people who ask, do we always know his voice? If he's the shepherd and we're the sheep, do we really know his voice? My answer is that absolutely we know his voice. The truth is, we know that we are called to love one another. We know where that comes from. We know that we are called to feed each other. We know where that comes from. We are called to care for one another and sacrifice for one another. We know where that comes from. That is the voice of our shepherd calling us to love one another as he has first loved us. After all, how do flocks live? They live as a family and as a community. You don't see many shepherds out there, if any at all, that have one sheep. It's not how it works. They stay in community and family. They huddle together. When one is injured, the stronger circle the one that is injured. And they all listen to their shepherd together as one. They literally act as one body. Of course we know his voice. It is the voice of love. It is the voice of grace. It is the voice of peace. It is the voice of service. So here we are, sheep in a flock, being tended to by our shepherd. We are the soil that he works with. We are the creatures that he protects. We are the perfect flock, the one body, the one community, the one family that move together as one, with one voice to follow. One voice. And that perhaps is the most important message of all of them. Before we are anything else in this world, we are sheep of Christ's flock. That is our most important identity. Everything else comes after that. So we give thanks to God today for those who care for the creation, those who tend to each other, those who protect each other. We give thanks to God for the call to each of us to be a part of this community, this family, this body, this flock that moves as one in the world. And we give thanks to God for the voice of peace and love and grace, Jesus himself, our shepherd, the only voice we truly follow. Thanks be to God. Amen.